Hello, BookTube. I had to remember briefly how to do this. It's been so long since I did a Stevestream. I'm hoping to do a couple more in the near term. I would like to get probably 10 more Stevestreams done before the end of the year, or at least before the election here in the United States. But I have remembered, I think this is working. I think this is going out live. The little spinning icon is not locking me out of my own Stevestream. So I thought I would start before I get to the chat, which because we have to stop at 10 past the hour. I thought I would start with one of the videos that I did not make today. I made a lot of videos today, but I didn't. There was one that I wanted to make, an announcement video that I wanted to make for an event in November. Dr. November is returning. The event that Mark at Book Time with Elvis invented last year to highlight espionage fiction, spy fiction. And I'll make a video about this tomorrow. I'll add a freestanding video about this to tomorrow's roster because a lot of people see. Excuse me. Well, isn't that an auspicious way to start a live stream? A lot of people see the video in their feed that a live stream has happened, that it happened X and 10 number of hours ago or whatever, and they don't click on it at all because there's no interest to them in a live stream if they're not part of it live. So they might miss this introduction, this announcement for a video. So I'll make it again tomorrow, but I want to make it now that Dr. November is returning in just a few days, just 10 days. It's going to the month of November. I know that, well, of course, Mark is the founder of the event. I think Mystery and Mayhem is one of our co-hosts. Another Bibliophile Reads, I think, is one of our co-hosts. There was a Voxer discussion going on about the whole thing, touching base, finding out who was involved, and I missed the Voxer discussion completely. No idea how that happened because I'm online all the time, but I missed it completely to the point where who are now my co-hosts just assumed that I wasn't interested, that I was just ignoring them. So Greg, at least another bibliophile reads, made an announcement video today that did not list me as a co-host, but I asked permission. I begged forgiveness. I am a co-host for Dr. November again this year. I had such a blast last year, even though the event last year got away from me. I had intentions last year that I did them somewhat, but I failed mostly because I intended to do a broad range amount of reading last year, and I did a huge amount of John le Carré reading instead. This year is slightly different from last year. Last year had a concentration on the Cold War, the epicenter of spycraft. This year it's anywhere where spycraft occurs, anywhere where where something that legitimately looks like espionage is happening. There are plenty of, for instance, historical novel sequences about spies in the Napoleonic era. Bernard Cornwell did a series about a spy in the United States Revolution. There was a pretty well-received book that was made into a miniseries about Washington spies. And lots of other things too, and the lots of other things encompasses the one other aspect of Dr. November this year, which is our new group read. We are reading The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. Going all the way back to 1907. We're reading Joseph Conrad's The Secret Agent together. And I don't know what we'll do about maybe talking about it together. I will certainly talk about it separately. Since it's a good choice for me because it's been a very long time since I read The Secret Agent, a very long time. Who knows what I'll make of it? I am not a Conrad fan. I think he is one of the worst writers who has crept into the periphery of the canon, just on a level of prose. I'm going to try and concentrate this time around on his ideas, pacing, everything other than the quality of the prose, the words on the page itself, because if you concentrate on the quality of Conrad's prose, you're lost. That is Dr. November. I wanted to announce that here, and I'll announce it again tomorrow, that there is another November event in addition to Nonfiction November. And that is largely what I have to report. There is no weather in this part of the country. If you look at the weather data, there's a big bruised red/orange mass that is, I think, right now over the upper Midwest here in the United States, is going to move east. So this weekend is going to be warm, and next week is going to be hot. It's going to be 80 degrees here in Boston in the fourth week of October. Uh, so, but it's also going to be completely dry without a breath of wind, so nothing to talk about there. And also, in terms of literature, nothing really to talk about. I am plugging along with two major things right at the moment. A paid project about serial killers that has taken on a very much more specific shape and involves a lot of research, and also Big Canoe News in Northern Georgia, a print newspaper that comes out once a month, has a book section. I'm that book section's editor, and we are now in the days leading up to the frenzy of deadline for the next edition. So those two things, but not much else. Of course, I'm as eager as everybody else to learn the details of the 58 Keys writing workshop that William Gallagher is making. The announcement video, I assume, will go up uh, sometime in November. I'm hoping that he can find the time to do a video chat with me about that. Not only about that, but also about his own bailiwick, his own wheelhouse, as it were. All these new changes and upgrades to Apple products, the products, and also the operating system. So a lot more detail on that coming. So there's nothing really to do about that. But that's all I had by way of opening throat clearing. I made a nice full roster of videos today, and it felt good. It definitely felt good to feel like I've got my booktube legs back. That's great. And now I'm going to, since we have to end at 10 past the hour, I'm going to turn it over to the chat, and we'll just keep going from there because that's always a lot of fun. So number one in the chat is Anti Gaia welcoming me back. Why, thank you. I don't remember how long it's been since the live stream. I obviously wasn't going to do a live stream while I had a guest here. That obviously wasn't going to happen, and not for an imposition, but because I wasn't even thinking about it. I was having fun instead. There have been a couple of other reasons why I couldn't. There'll be reasons in this coming weekend and next week, but I'm hoping for a few. Uh, Anti Gaia is back with another comment. You can answer in the live stream if you like. I'm not paying you to write, so I don't feel like the onus is on you to respond in text form. Well, it's not much work to respond to welcome back. So I wouldn't expect, even I wouldn't expect you to pay me for that. So that's rather an enticing idea, but I'm not that much of a grubbing freelancer. Uh, Jared Donahue says the legend returns. Steve Abramsky says, hi, Steve. You may have already discussed at some point. What did you think of the new Ta-Nehisi Coates book? I didn't object to it as much as I did. I'm not talking about his novel, but his previous work of nonfiction. I didn't object to it as much. Of course, he's a beautiful prose writer. It's beautiful prose. I find that I like his prose a lot better uh, when it's. He's a beautiful prose stylist, and I think an almost brainless polemicist, and those two don't go together well. So when he leans more towards the one than the other, I love it. And yet, and yet, I of course watched the now famous exchange between him and Tony Dukerhole on TV. And I was watching that exchange, and I had a multitude of mixed reactions. Of course, a lot of my reactions were personal to Tony, who largely got me back into reviewing. At least he didn't. My friend Sam got me back into reviewing after a 25-year hiatus. But it was Tony who gave me a place to write at Columbia. And he has since gone on to do hugely better and bigger and better things. And I watched that interchange between him and Ta-Nehisi Coates. They claim to be friends. Tony claimed that the two of them are friends. I believe that Tony got called on the carpet by his overlords at the station for being boorish in his interchange with Ta-Nehisi Coates. But so that was a little conflicted because he's gone on to blow-dried stardom when I knew him when. But the other set of reactions was I was sitting back there saying to Ta-Nehisi Coates, I was saying, why can't you write polemics like you're saying them? This is great. This is fantastic. You are genuinely impressive. Why can't you write these points like that? Why is your writing when you do this kind of writing, so hectoring. And I don't know. Maybe it's just that he's a really personable guy, face to face. I don't know one way or another. Stephen Bronstein has another thing. I listened to a sad but funny short New York Times podcast episode about Melania Trump's memoir. Did you enjoy slogging through that one? Well, well, you can hear what I thought about that book if you tune into. I think it was about a month ago. Jeff and I talked about it on Cedarburg Public Library's Books of the Week. I I almost stroked out when I talked about it with Jeff because I genuinely do not understand what Melania Trump's book is. I genuinely don't understand what it is. You might say, well, that's hyperbole, right? You're just what you mean is it's a bad book. No, I don't understand what it is. The object looks like a book. The object has print and paper and pages and paste. The object looks like a book, but it is in actuality some sort of quantum singularity that collapses in on itself the minute you look at it. The minute you look at it, its wave function collapses. I have no idea what it actually is. Melania Trump didn't write it. Melania Trump can't write it. Melania Trump can't read it. Melania Trump didn't pay the person who wrote it. Melania Trump would deny that anyone wrote it. The person signed an NDA and can't say that they wrote it. Melania Trump did not pay the person who would deny that they wrote the thing that isn't a memoir of someone who can't read and can't write and who didn't live any of the experiences in the book. The book is not a book. No one's going to read it. No one is interested in it. Nothing in it is true, but also nothing in it is false. It's just, it is not any attempt for her to set the record straight. There isn't any record. It isn't anything like her attempt to speak her own truth. There's nothing in it that's true. There's nothing in it that's false. And there's nothing in it that's her. Literally, this is quantum superposition. The minute you look at any of this, it disappears. I don't understand what was in the cardboard cartons that were shipped to bookstores. I don't know what this is. I can't even talk about how it performs because 4 different members of the Trump family have already been caught gaming the system and lying about the sales of their books. So I don't even know. I can't even assess it that way, that it's an unsuccessful book. I can't even say that because I have no idea. No one will ever know. Every dock worker signed an NDA. They'd all lie anyway. They're all Trump cults. I literally don't know what it is. It doesn't have an author. It doesn't have an editor. It doesn't have a ghostwriter. It doesn't have any readers. It doesn't have a point. It doesn't have any truth in it. It doesn't have any facts in it. It disappears like a soap bubble the minute you think about it. So I slogged through it. I suppose I slogged through it. It's terrible, but I ended up not knowing what it is. And I just anyway. MF says, why do you use thirst trap thumbnails? Well, I didn't know what to do, so I just did a selfie. Thank you. It was just handy just to turn the phone around. Aslan says hello. Levi says hi, Steve. Carolina says hello from Barcelona. Let's see here. Daniel says hello. Okay, we have our first chat jump. In how long has it been? Daniel says, good evening. Aslan says, I will ask the obvious question. What are your thoughts on the literature Nobel Prize? I don't have any thoughts on it. It's totally irrelevant. It's the Nobel Prize in literature is totally irrelevant because they gave it to Dylan. They gave it to a coked up illiterate who couldn't even read the things that they got the prize for. That is pretty much the ne plus ultra of a literary award being pointless, is if they hand it to someone who can't even read. That's something out of Orwell. So once that happened, and as I tried to point out at the time when that happened, that doesn't just make the award utterly irrelevant and not worth talking to moving forward in time, it also retroactively invalidates the Nobel. So I also don't care who won it in the past in literature. It doesn't go quite so far as to invalidate it in all other characteristics. But the Nobel Prize in Physics, if it were awarded to me, would be the same way. Sid says, people in my life have been hearing a lot of, but I don't even know what it is ever since you reviewed the Melania book on CPL radio. Yes, that was the segment. I guess Jared didn't see it, but that was the segment where I almost lost my cookies. And I almost lost my cookies in Monday's upcoming session on CPL radio. twice over because our nonfiction pick and our fiction pick were both designed to set me off. But the Melania Trump book, literally, I say the Melania Trump book, but aside from it having the outward form of a book, I don't know what it is. No idea. Nothing else about it, not even the implied statements about it, are in any way true. There's a name on the cover that the name is false on every level. The person didn't write the book. The person uh, has taken legal action, preemptive legal action against the person who did write the book. Perhaps, as far as I know, the Trump family's had that person killed. Uh, the person can't read the book. The person can't write anything. The person doesn't believe any of the statements that are made in the book, doesn't remember them, didn't live through them, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, Levi says, I think I recall you saying that you spent time in Japan. How did you like it? I lived there for 2 years and really enjoyed my time there. I also really liked it. Really liked it there. There were aspects of Tokyo itself that I didn't particularly like, but I spent a lot of time out in the hinterlands, so that made up for it. Sid says, I don't think people from Massachusetts are allowed to have a bad time in Japan. Thankfully, I was not recognized as being an American when I was in Japan. I was, of course, recognized as being a Westerner, but I wasn't recognized as being American. I was rather flattered that I had a host up in the north of the country. Where was that exactly? Well, I had a host. I originally plunkered down with friends of a friend, a family, uh, a harried husband, a wife, a child, and no offense intended, no ill will intended. But after about a day, they decided that I would be a much better house guest for the wife's uncle. And so I and my dogs went to the wife's uncle, and he was a wonderful old man who lived alone with his books, and it was a wonderful match, an absolutely wonderful match. And over we had the equivalent of wine and calzones every night, and uh, the closest that he could come was that I was Italian. My 400 generations of Irish tried not to take that personally. Instead, I took it as a kind of compliment. And I this was all years and years and years and years ago. But I heard through my friend of a friend, I heard from that family that uncle never stopped talking about how that was the most fun he's had in years, having that guest, which was great. That was great to hear. Daniel Cox says, do you have some recommendations for novels of the Vietnam War? I've read Carl Molante's Matterhorn and Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. What have been your favorites? I really like both of those. I also like oh god, James Webb. Is it Field of Fire? Uh, that's it, right? Oh my god. Well, I've got the little iPad here for looking things up. Uh, am I thinking of the wrong person? Uh, yes, Fields of Fire. I really enjoyed Fields of Fire. Uh, Aslan says, what recent author do you like for their prose? Richard Powers. Very much so. Sometimes that's the only thing I have to cling to. Really didn't understand because of that. I don't have it in front of me here because it's already gone. But uh, I really didn't understand the opening of the TLS's review of his new book. The first sentence of that review. I'm sure you can call it up online. I'm sure you can get the first sentence, even if you can't get the rest of the review. The first sentence looks to be a towering insult. I can't help but think it's going to get referenced in the letters page at some point. Um, and it's not called for at all. It's just a bald 180 misread of not only the book but Powers in general. I didn't get that at all. I almost wrote a letter myself, but I had a guest. Uh, let's see here. Uh, Daniel says, I'm about to move in the next month. The temptation to make my book collection fully digital is very strong. Is that heresy? No. If there's one thing that will guarantee that you start to consider going all digital, it's moving. That will do it. If nothing else will, that will do it. Again, I'm reminded of BookTube. I don't know how many of you saw Jack Edwards' newest video, but he had to tear apart that dream library that he made because he's moving across the country. Uh, I don't follow the many Jack Edwards subreddits that I'm sure exist. I'm not up on the gossip, so I have no idea where he's moving or why. I'm assuming since he's enormously wealthy that he's moving into a big house. But I remember very fondly the video where he made that little library at the top of the stairs and he had to disassemble it. And that's when it hit him how many books he has. And I was looking at that room with his shelves of, I think it's wasted space on those shelves. It's all just the latest flyweight fiction. Gah. But he loves it. And he was looking at those shelves and the stacks of books on the end and thinking, God, this is going to be a pain in the neck to move. And I was envious looking at it because it's a 15th of what I have here. Yeah, moving will do it if nothing else does. Manny says, I finished Agatha Christie's and Then There Were None today, and I loved it. What is your favorite Agatha Christie book? My favorite Agatha Christie book should be her novel set in ancient Egypt, and yet it's not. Murder at the Vicarage. No, the Body in the Library is my favorite Agatha Christie book. Uh, Andrew Russell says, "Hi Steve, reading Hugh Trevor Roper's The Last Days of Hitler, and it's definitely the best work of nonfiction I've read this year. Has reignited my reading interest after a bit of a slump." Yeah, it's a really good little book. You once you're done with it, and you know that you like it, and you're interested in the subject, maybe you might want to look into the controversy that it kicked up and has continued to kick up. There were Third Reich historians at the time who just excoriated the thing. One of them famously saying, the quote has become famous, that there's a howler on every page. But it's still a fantastic book, an absolutely fantastic book, and it opens the door to other studies of the final weeks of the Third Reich. Uh, Anti Gaia says, no part of my other comment didn't post for some reason. What other comment are we talking about? I was going to clarify that I don't necessarily think that you think the election will be rigged per se, just that the vote won't be certified. Oh, is this in reference to a comment you left on a video? That must be it. Yeah, I never in a million years said that the vote will be rigged. I said that the vote won't be certified. There are Trump cult members in a handful of states who've already established that they will not certify any tallies other than ones that favor him. And I'm sure that there are Trump cult secretaries of state who are willing to risk a jail sentence because they're assuming that he will ascend in glory and pardon them if they do. And also, unlike last time where everybody was blindsided, there are members of Congress. Mike Johnson will not certify electors if it's going against Trump. He just won't do it. That's between him and his weird messiah. So there's no chance at all that this will happen. None at all. What we're going to be greeted with the morning after the election is a flurry of lawsuits at best. A stack of bodies would be the worst, but a flurry of lawsuits at best. I made a prediction on Voxer to somebody that we won't have a president at Thanksgiving. And I might be willing to stand by that. Sid says, speaking of e-reading, I love my blue Kindle, but oh God, this new green basic Kindle is so pretty. What? There's a green basic Kindle? I did not know this. One of you must buy it and send it to me. No, don't bother, because I am in love with my little iPad. So this is a perfect vehicle for reading. Anti-Gaia is back. However, didn't that judge in Georgia say, oh, wait, no, you disappeared. You disappeared. Let's go back to Anti-Gaia. There you go. Didn't that judge in Georgia say those officials must with a capital M certify results, assuming to mean if they don't, there will be consequences? They don't care about consequences at all. They're living a millenarian mind frame in a doomsday cult, so they don't care about consequences. And either way, even if there are consequences, what does that help you or me? Living in a country with yeah, there might be consequences, but none of them are thinking about all the people that interfered at the state level with elections, all of whom are going to prison, one of whom famously for 9 years. Instead, they're looking at God. They're looking to the example of God. And God has been indicted, but he has not been convicted, and the court that he has set in over our lives has ruled that he can't be convicted. He's going to skate forever. He's going to die of old age in 2047, never having seen the inside of a prison or a court for the crimes that he committed against the United States on January 6th. So They see that. I I'd be happy if you're right, and people do say, well, I do worship him. I do adore him, but I've got a family. I've got kids. And I'm not going to risk not seeing them for 5 years. So maybe you're right. I hope that's true. That we're gonna have enough problems as it is. Uh, Leo Percara says, "Hello, Steve. What's the worst Trollope novel, and is it still worth reading?" No, no, that early Irish novel that he did is not worth reading. There are quite a few. Actually, a lot of the flyweight little things that he did at breakneck speed with no editing are not really worth reading. I mean, you will. I mean, people will read Lydia Tressel and whatnot, but they're not really worth it. A Trollope completist will read them. I read them, but they're not really worth it. No, you want him at his best. You want him when he's starting to feel his own natural strengths. Uh, Flora should be reading. Hi, Steve. Glad you're back. I've been watching Rings of Power season 2, and even though it's very messy, I must admit I'm enjoying the Sauron Celebrimbor dynamic. Was there anything you liked about that? No, no, there wasn't. It isn't a Sauron Celebrimbor dynamic. It isn't at all. Neither one of them resemble the character that have those names. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous dynamic. Well, it's the dynamic between Sauron and Celebrimbor is lifted almost letter by letter, almost word for word, certainly dynamic beat from some campy 90s gay couple thing. What was the name of the British sitcom with Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi as an old campy gay couple? Exact same dynamic. Utterly ridiculous. Blasphemous, in fact. No, there literally wasn't anything about the show at all on any level that I liked. Andy Gaia says there must be some kind of flag words that I'm using in the chat. Trust me, it's not slurs. I'm a good boy. Well, at least you're giving me the benefit of the doubt and saying that I'm not doing it, because I'm not doing it. I don't do that. I don't know. I have no idea. I can't imagine that YouTube watches the content of chats. I don't have any mods. My mod has no opposable thumbs, so she can't help in this regard. M. Kundera says, "Hello, Steve. Do you think someday you will write your book on criticism?" My book on criticism? I didn't know that was one of my books. The book on criticism that I would like to write would be a collection of my criticism, a big collection of my criticism, with a long introduction about the idea of book reviewing. Of course, there's lots and lots of writing about book reviewing that would be in that book, but that would be largely a reprint volume. Leo Percara says, is the same is it the same with the Nobel Peace Prize when they gave it to Kissinger? Well, I guess on one level it would be theoretically. It doesn't feel the same to me because books mean so much to me. And the Nobel Committee knew what they were doing when they gave it to Dylan. They knew exactly what kind of a reaction they would get. They wanted it, and they got it. So to me, it's a separate category, but I guess that they are parallel. David Adams says, "I imagine you've already commented on the image of Superman with dog and the discussion by the director about his adoption of a dog and how it had influenced his thoughts on a companion for Superman." No idea what you're talking about. Anti-Guy says, "Speaking of other countries, I've been using one of those free language apps to try to learn Ukrainian. I'm surprised by how hard it is, much harder than I thought it would be." I've never tried to learn Ukrainian. I'll take your word for it. Manny says, "What prompted you to travel so much? Any specific reason?" Uh, it was there. Am I allowed to say that as a reason? Or is that too snotty? I had the money and I had the ability. Really, I didn't need any prompting more than that. Uh, Quaint and Curious Volumes is here. Tell us about your new art, please. My new art? Oh, you noticed. That is Mole from Wind in the Willows, and he is I don't know if you can make it out, but he's busily reading the Romantic Poets, and there's a little mouse in his teacup, just hanging there. I absolutely love that print. It was hanging on the door to the bathroom, specifically, of a used bookstore in Boston called the Brandeis Bookstall. It was it was one subterranean room with two little old ladies in it who sold used books. They just sat there all day. They sold used books as a kind of satellite funds generator for Brandeis University. And I used to, whenever I was in Brookline, I used to go over there. I used to go over to that shop because a lot of it was off slop from students. So and the prices were the prices were scandalously dirt cheap. So I would go there when I was in the area. When I was in Coolidge Corner for a whole bunch of other reasons. There was once upon a time there was always a good reason to go to Coolidge Corner, and I'd always digress. I would divert to go to the Brandeis bookstall, and I would it was just one room, so I would just wander around, look at the books, uh, and every time I went, I noticed that picture on the wall. Uh, and every time I went to the bathroom, I noticed that it was just hanging on the wall. And one summer day, I just took it into my head to go up to. Oh, hang on. What's the matter, baby? Huh? What's the matter? You got an itch I can help you with? No. Um, I went up to the two little old ladies at the front desk and said, "I'm just wondering, is that poster on the wall for sale?" And one of them said, "Everything's for sale here, hon." So, I think they charged me $1.75 for it. And then I rolled it up. I was careful with it. I didn't want to destroy it. And then I got it framed. Uh, and I've just kept it ever since. uh, let's see here. Aslan says, I find it hard to justify buying physical books since I bought an e-reader. There's precious little justification. I know that I'm not the person to say, because I just bought 100 books last week with David Murphy. And I also get books in the mail. Really, it should be just one of those two. I should never buy used books at all. I should never do that. I justify it by saying, well, I'll go out hunting for them with David or without David, and I will just get the ones where I've never seen an ebook, where I don't think an ebook exists. I never end up just doing that though. I never do. Uh, it's hard to justify it, as I am hoping to change that completely in the new year myself. Uh, Sid says, oh no, Sid, your comment went away. Let's go and find you. There we go. Uh, it it Why do I have a? It is sobering to think that if he continues to train at his current rate, Steve Donahue may one day be able to generate a video all but indistinguishable from an actual work of Dude Bro Cannon. So you found it. Those of you who don't know what Sid's talking about, he is paraphrasing the opening line of that Richard Powers review in the TLS. It's not talking about Dude Bro Cannon. It's talking about being a literary novelist from a reviewer who's never written squat. Much less the 10 great literary novels that Richard Powers has written. I did not understand that line. I just it was just so freebootingly aggressive and petty and wrong, just objectively wrong. It doesn't matter if Richard Powers is to your taste. I did not get it at all. I should talk about it. Maybe I should write about it. I should write about it on Steve Reads, now that I think about it. Andrew McDonald says, why do you think Christopher Ricks devoted a book to analyzing Dylan's lyrics? Because he liked them when he was high as a kid, like everybody else. He liked them when he was high in a dorm room. That's all. Or he liked them in the 60s. Equates them with the 60s and early 70s, starting to feel his hair go or his waistline widen, and doesn't like that fact. His book is nonsense. I read it, and it's nonsense. Might as well be writing a book like that about the harmonics of pigs out in a pen. Anti Gaia says, well, he didn't pardon the January 6 people before he left. Why would he pardon these other people? He won't, because they want something of him and they'd have to pay for it. But they don't care. They don't even notice that he didn't do it. Uh, because it's a cult is the simple answer here. Sid says, yeah, a bunch of new Kindles were released today, including the first color Kindle. I saw Michael K. Vaughan's video about the first color Kindle, but I didn't realize that there's a new basic in green. I wish I had cult followers of my own to boss into buying me pretty green one. Well, you don't. Instead, you are one, so buy me one. Stephen Rossi says, did you think Obama's messaging to black men was a good idea? Well, as opposed to what? A bad idea? I I don't know how seriously young black men especially take him, but it was a heck of a speech, so I didn't mind. Monet Doyle says hello, hello. RTLLTR says is responding to Sid. Uh, Hamilton Thompson says, "Oh, esteemed reviewer, my local library still has a hold list on the double digits for Kristen Hanna's The Women. People read but don't actually buy the product. How do publishers turn a profit? Beats me. I assume they have Frida. Frida, cut it out. Come here. Come back over here, baby. Well, if you're going to go over there and misbehave, then you have to be over here. Come here. Come here. Come on. No. All right. I assume that publishers don't turn a profit, or that they cook the books. That the famous Monopoly trial really showed that they don't have any idea what their own financial model is. I assume that they have some massive money makers. Certainly, that was true 50 years ago, 60 years ago. You would have this big prestigious literary publisher, and they would be coming out with these highlighted items with all sorts of swanky book launches. But the crossword puzzle books were underwriting the whole thing. uh, Kevin Compton. Oh man, I am so glad someone asked about the most notable absence from the Stevestream, Erasmus. Really curious about whatever that is up there on the wall. That is a toad or mole reading the books. He's reading Blake and Yeats and Coleridge. uh, Steve Bronstein says, "Do you think the killing of Sinwar marks any kind of turning point?" No. Must read more says, "Hi Steve. Are any of Georgette Heyer's romance novels set in the 20th century? I really like her mystery novels." I think she wrote. Oh no, maybe I'm thinking of Betty Neals. It could be that she wrote everything. Uh, the romance novels might all be historical. They aren't all set in the Regency, but I think they're all historical. But I really recommend her murder mysteries, which are set in her present day. Come here, Frida. Come over here. Come on, you know you want to. Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on. You can do it. Come on over here. You can do it. There you go. Good girl. Good girl. There you go. I really recommend her mystery novels, which are contemporary. I really recommend them. Uh, uh, Anti Guy says, "Oh, you know about her mystery novels." Okay, well, I recommend them anyway. Anti Guy says, "In the category of good news, I got a copy of Woodward's new book. Enjoying it so far. I know you have some choice words for the guy. You'll hear them all on Monday." Woodward's book was the nonfiction. It was the A block of Monday's show. uh, uh, Jeffrey says, "What did you think of Simon Sebag Montefiore? I really enjoyed Young Stalin and have a couple of his fiction books on order." I don't know much about his fiction, but I like his history. Monet Doyle says, "I've been reading some rather dark Halloween books." Dark romance? I don't remember that being your thing. Is that a change? Anti-Gaia says, "Giving the Peace Prize to Kissinger is the same as giving Anthony Blinken the prize." Not quite. No, but I see where your heart is going. Hamilton Thompson says, "Oh, that show was vicious with Derek Jacobi. Great stuff." Right. Vicious. Right. And it was great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. But, but, uh, as a template for Sauron and Celebrimbor, no, no, not at all. Uh, Echo Falls says, "When you the chat jumped again. Echo Falls, that's the name we're going for. When you call a contemporary novel great, is there any implicit great for something contemporary? Are you putting it in the same level as a great classic? Do you think the quality of art has degraded?" Uh, I I'm not really consciously adding that silent addendum of for something contemporary. I'm mainly saying I can't spot a flaw, or I can't spot any major flaw. Of course, for a book to be great, there are other elements, and one of them certainly is not that it's flawless. But one other element, the one element that no critic can know, is will it stay great, so to speak. It's not going to change, of course. It's in typeface, but will it stay great? Will it survive the test of time? Not only for the reading public and school curricula, but just for you as a critic. If you live long enough, if you return to a book that you read 50 years ago, will it hold up? Will it speak to you? Will it show you new things as opposed to being a charity case? So calling a new book great is, I mean, when I do it verbally, just in conversation with friends, it's purely colloquially. I'm just meaning to say it's really, really good. I'm not using the word great, that, capital G carved in marble. But excuse me, when I do it in a review, I almost never call a book great in a review. I can't remember the last time I did, but excuse me. Uh, but when I really praise it, I'm thinking of it in those kind of contemporary terms, without really looking at Mount Helicon or at the future ages. Anti-Gaia says, speaking of which, Biden gave Netanyahu a 30-day ultimatum to get his act together. Do you think it will have any effect whatsoever? Well, uh, first of all, okay, we don't need to darken the Steve stream, but first of all, when credible international reports are coming out that you are murdering civilians by the tens of thousands, you don't give them a 30-day period. You give them a 3-minute period. I'm going to call you. Okay, I've got you on the phone. You know enough English to know that I'm what 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi is. I'm going to count to 3 Mississippi. At the end of 3 Mississippi, if you have not issued field commands to cease fire, I'm going to end all US aid to Israel. All of it. Not just the military, all of it. Which means that you'll be wiped off the map within a month by all your enemies, all of whom hate you. Uh, it, it, any effect whatsoever, the United States could end this. It could have the effect whatsoever. The United States could end this. Noam Chomsky and I do not agree on much. I never have. But we agree on that. Israel is able to do what it does only because the United States underwrites it. If the United States did not, it would not be able to do that. I don't know the contents of this conversation, but 30 days is obscene. 30 days is obscene. Outside impartial observers have said that huge parts of Gaza have not had water or food since October, or rather since what was the date they gave? One of you will know. It's a long time. It means that the population is dying of starvation. That there's an imposed famine quite apart from the war damage. That's obscene. The whole thing. Again, I don't agree with Noam Chomsky much. I don't agree with angry little Owen Jones much either. But he's absolutely right when he calls this a monstrous war crime, and we are the underwriters of it. So 30-day ultimatum to get his act together. What does that even mean? Biden should have told him on the phone, knock it off today, or there will be serious consequences. Biden should have reminded him today, foreign policy is entirely in my discretion. Uh, anyway, Flora should be reading. I'm definitely going to be picturing the alternative universe where Derek Jacobi is Celebrimbor and Ian McKellen is Sauron. Oh, the fun they would have. You know, the irony, I didn't think about it until this stream, of course. The irony is that if you gave them a good script, of course, the script is terrible, just terrible. But the irony is here that if you gave them a good script, they'd be great in these roles. They'd be great. Uh, but anyway, Steve Ronstein says the mole is reading Odd Dog, isn't he? No, no. What's he reading? Is he reading? I can't quite see from here in reverse. Uh, David Adams says Crypto the Superdog is confirmed for the new Superman movie by James Gunn. He's released an image of Crypto the dog with Superman floating in space looking at Earth. Is that so? Crypto is in the new movie. Wow. Isn't that fun? Wow. But the new movie is not independently financed. It's not a GoFundMe project. It's done by a Hollywood studio, which means that now what I knew was going to happen before, which is that Superman gets saved by a black Lois Lane at the end of the movie. Now I know that Superman and Crypto get saved by a black Lois Lane at the end of the movie. You know, it'd be great to see a live action Crypto, but Sid says, I think that commentator was talking about a sneak peek of James Gunn's new Superman. Yes, new Superman movie, Superman and Crypto together, albeit only from the back. I've not seen this. I'll have to look at it. I have no plans to watch the movie, so I haven't looked at any of the advanced stuff. Uh, uh, let's see here. David Adams, James Gunn has also spoke about his adoption of a dog, and this influenced his thoughts on introducing it to the new Superman movie. Oh, well, that sounds wonderful. It will still be a travesty, but that sounds wonderful. I'll have to watch interviews. They'll at least be satisfying. Leo Percara says, do you like the books of Marie Benedict? Oh, I'm terrible with authors like this out of the blue. I don't know. I don't recognize the name. I'm sure that I've read something, but I don't recognize the name. Anti-Gaia says, God, I'm just struck by how tragic it would be if Kamala is not put in office, considering all the energy invested in her. considering all the energy that's invested in her, yes, and also considering what happens if she's not, to me, to my house, to you, to everybody who lives here, to everybody in the world. Yeah, tragic, among many other words. Uh, Kevin Compton says, "Arg, I love the art, great image, fun story." No idea what you're talking about. David Adams says, "I think you'll enjoy the image of Crypto the dog with Superman, and if you can watch the James Gunn interview with his adopted dog, you'll be joyful." That's great. I'm sure I will. I'm sure that I will. It's just the movie that I already know what's going to happen. I'm not getting my hopes up for. I'm not. Hollywood's not going to do this to me anymore with big screen tent pole franchises. I already know that they are ideologically compromised from the DNA up. There is no way to change it, because if there were, that would have meant studio heads and executive directors being fired, and I would have seen that in the trade news, and that didn't happen. So since that didn't happen, I know what this movie is. I know what it will be. But the images, the interview, certainly. Steve Bronstein says, "What did you think of Kamala's performance in the Fox interview?" I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. I thought there were a couple of moments where it almost seemed like she was going to say, it almost seemed like she was verging to the edge of "don't talk over me and don't interrupt me because I'm a woman," and then past that to "don't talk over me and interrupt me because I'm a presidential candidate and I'm your guest," all the way to "don't talk over me and interrupt me because I am your vice president." Brett Baer would say not. If you asked him who's your vice president, he'd say JD Vance. He wouldn't say that Kamala Harris is. Absolutely not. But she almost seemed like she was like, you could almost tell that she has been in that role for 4 years, and people don't talk that way to the president or vice president. They're not just outwardly rude. Brett Baer was not as rude as other Fox weirdos would have been, but he's still pretty rude. And I thought she handled herself just fine. But I think regardless of how she handled herself, unless there was an absolute flop, which there wasn't, I think she gets the most credit for doing it at all. Uh, and I've heard talk about her going on Joe Rogan. That would be amazing. If she did, that would be amazing. Uh, uh, Aslan says, "You mentioned once how you have a very developed sense of scent like dogs. Does that mean you can smell cancer? And is that why you hate the road so much?" No, I don't have. I have a very keen sense of smell compared to other humans, uh, but not compared to dogs. Oh my god, no, not compared to dogs. Not even close. Most humans don't have the faintest conception of how good. How no, good is even the wrong word, because that means like you're just going up in the same line as your own scent. Theirs is a whole different world. It's so advanced. Most humans have not the faintest conception of what that is, or what that world is like. But I don't go into that world, but I go a lot further than most people do. I can't smell cancer. No. But then again, dogs don't smell cancer either. Uh, they smell other things. They smell what cancer does. Quaint and Curious Volumes. Victorian should observe Victober by reviewing the Western Canon Starter Kit Victorian episode. Baby Frida chomps on his nose. Yes, it's in the Victorian era that Frida makes her appearance. Not her debut. I think she makes her debut appearance in another video that I made that day, uh, about Romeo and Juliet for Shake Timber. But those are the two videos. My Shake Timber video on Romeo and Juliet, and my Victorian episode for the Western Canon. That is little baby Frida before she had a name. She was a day old here. She had been here a day. You can in the background you can still see my very very old, very sick, blind, arthritic, helpless old dog Malin. And then this tiny little puppy, just like that, just a tiny little puppy. Uh, Manny says, "I've been wanting to read some World War II history. I have Shire's Rise and Fall, but since it was written so long ago, I am wondering how much history I am missing, or if I will miss anything important." You won't miss anything important, but you might want to read other things as well. I mean, uh, also old, but also very good, is Deliverance from Evil by Robert Leckie, a military historian. That's doesn't have a dull page anywhere in it. It's a big, thick thing that will do you really well. Or Michael Burley's one volume biography of the Third Reich, which is also great, and is a great compliment to the rise and fall of the Third Reich. Uh, Auntie Gaia says Kamala absolutely cooked Brett Baer. She did a really good job. She knew what she was walking into, and she handled it perfectly. Uh, Lou Balby says, you've mentioned that you reread the Iliad and the Odyssey every year. What is your favorite translation? Uh, well, I lean towards the Fitzgerald, but I feel a little guilty about that this year because I didn't do. I read the Iliad, I reread the Iliad and the Odyssey every year, and I do it partially because I love both books, but also as a celebration of the art of translation into English. And I sort of let the side down this year in that regard, but probably Fitzgerald. Uh, Hazy Hill says, "Hey, hope you guys are having a good week." Uh, okay. Aslan says, "I'm always afraid to reread a favorite because I might not like it as much." There's an element of fear for me as well, but I'm constantly turning over ground on old things and new things all the time, and I prefer the happy surprise of finding something new or re-finding something new so much that I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk the awful feeling of going into something and thinking, "Oh, this might not be as good as I thought." I just did that the other day with Susanna Dunn's novel, The Sixth Wife, about Catherine Parr, the sixth wife of Henry VIII. I found it in a little free library. I reread it. I wrote about it for Steve Reads. I just did it the other day, and I breathed a sigh of relief that it was still really good. Uh, Comics Gaze says, "Why are there people who think Trump is a populist?" No idea. No idea at all. He's not a populist. He can't even stand to be around normal people. He said it many, many times. He said it many times in private. We have dozens of people saying, "I don't want to touch these people. I really hate being around them." He's used all sorts of coarse names for them, all sorts of coarse insults for them. He's not literally craps on a gold toilet. He's not a populist in any way. Uh, Brian Constantine says, "I think they should let Rings of Power have their full 5 seasons, but they have to do a crossover with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon movies." Uh, no, this show should be canceled, and none of the people connected with it—the writers, the producers, the directors of photography, the photographers, the costumers, the choreographers, no one should work again. Just the show should be canceled, and it should be a complete black bar across 1,000 resumes. Uh, Manny says, also, I loved Kotkin's Stalin biography. Would you recommend other books he wrote about the Soviet Union? I would, yeah. Deep in the Reeds says, what are your thoughts on The Tenders the Fresh by Agustina Bazterrica? I know you're not big on horror, but thought you might like an anti-meat industry aspect. Don't think I've read it. Anti-Guy says, by the way, I really hope there are not many MAGA people watching this and taking screenshots of the chat. I'm way down on the list. I'm sure. If I'm on the list at all, I'm way down on the list. I've been a vocal, scathing critic of this racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron ever since he came down his escalator and said that all Mexicans were rapists. I've been, and also long before that, if you go back in time, you can find editorials that I've written against this poltroon for the better part of 40 years. But I'm not high profile, so there are a lot of people who will be addressed first before I am. Uh, uh, Kevin Compton says, Steve the Mole. I love the Mole. The print over your shoulder, reading odds bod, because I know, isn't that a great print? Earlier in this Stevestream, you can hear its origin story, which I should probably do in a video as well. I look at it fondly, not only because I love the printing and how utterly bookish it is, but also because of its origin story, because I just happened to liberate it from a store. And the Brandeis bookstall, where I saw it all those years, and then finally asked if I could just buy it, uh, unceremoniously went out of business. I went by there once, years and years later, just to shop for more books, and it was gone. There was nothing there anymore. No word at all. No, I talked to a couple of people in nearby shops. They didn't. It was there one day and gone the next. And I'm sure that everything that was in there was just trashed, so it would have been destroyed. So I'm glad that I saved it. Uh, Kevin Compton says, "Sorry, just excited about the art. It's nice. It's very nice to have a change of pace." Um, Cosmic Gaze says, "What does my Labrador Retriever constantly bark at when I cut the grass?" I would have to see it. It's a weird thing to cut the grass. One thing I can tell you that. Also releases an unbelievable thermonuclear explosion of scents and sounds. But it's also a weird thing for you to do, just while it's happening. I don't know if your Labrador barks at the grass once it's cut or barks at you cutting the grass. I'd have to see it, but probably it's one of those two things. Hamilton Thompson says, "Didn't I hear DC finance the new movie with cryptocurrency?" Uh, David Galloway says, "Best fireside Christmas books." Well, for me, it's so far it's been this, the Big Book of Christmas Mysteries Auto Penciler. I've been having a blast with this thing. Much more. I mean, I read it when it first came out, but I'm having a much bigger amount of fun with it now than I thought I would. Uh, Aslan says, "What would you recommend for someone who wants to get into reading history?" I would recommend, almost certainly, even if you've never read history, there's almost certainly going to be some aspect of history that already interests you. It's not a marriage, so you don't have to stick with it forever, but go with that. That's already a tiny little inroad. There must be something that already interests you a little. Is there a person, an American president, a Roman emperor? Is there a concept? Ships at sea, uh, wildlife, hunting, gladiators. There must be the pyramids. There must be something that interests you more than just the flat horizon of all the rest of history. Always there is something like that. Even if it's a historical figure that shares your name. If you're coming to it cold and it's maybe intimidating or too vast or you have no idea where to start, go with that. Find that thing and dig into it a little. The key to demystify getting into reading history is that it makes you feel like a horrible fumbling neophyte, and that's not a good feeling. Nobody likes that feeling. So the key is to get a little ground under your feet to start with, a little ground under your feet, and then a little more, and then a little more, and then you can branch out and keep branching out. You should keep branching out. You shouldn't just react to fear and intimidation by learning a little patch and just staying there. You should branch out to a lot, so you could be a Civil War guy. But that's what I'd recommend. Find something where you already have a little toehold and maximize that. Sid says, "Delivered from Evil is amazing. Reads like a novel." That sounds like an insult to it. No, it does read like a novel. I know what you mean. I was surprised to find Lecky in HBO's Pacific after that. That's right, he is. Oh my, I need to rewatch Pacific. I need to rewatch it. Auntie Gaia says, "I thought the Apprentice film was actually pretty good. I was horrified by the R word scene. Is there any truth to that, or is it just artistic license?" Well, I'm not sure exactly what scene you mean, but the press in New York in the 1990s was well aware of the incredible amounts of legitimate proof, legitimate substantiation of all kinds of accusations against Trump, uh, for the things that he has done to his current wife, that he did in New York in front of guests, would boggle the mind for their sadism and cruelty. And she's not the only one. Uh, wait, the chat jumped. Oh my god. Uh, Here, let's go back. Where are we here? There we go. Kevin Compton. "I don't even know how you prep for Joe Rogan as Kamala Harris. Do you get a staffer high? Maybe get a Republican staffer high?" I would hope that Joe Rogan would not drink or get high while she's on set. I know he can't go very long without, but I would hope that he would restrain himself and show a little decorum. Maybe that's ridiculous. Maybe that's why she won't do it. Uh, uh, Plus, a lot of his normal operating procedure would have to change in order for her to go there. Keep in mind, she is the sitting vice president, so she would go with the Secret Service detail. So the guns, registered and unregistered, would all have to go, and the people who have mile-long criminal records would all have to go. None of them could be allowed anywhere near a safety perimeter of the vice president. So it might logistically it might not work for her to go on his show. Uh, Cosmic A says, "Thoughts on Paul Giamatti, John Adams miniseries?" I thought it was terrible, just terrible, and not just because Sam Adams was a glowering thug, but uh, what's the point of the, the constantly rocking camera angle? What was the point of that? What was the point of everyone in the show being an a-hole except for him? What was the point of the chain smoking? I didn't like anything of it at all. Well, no, actually, what's his name? The actor who played George Washington, I think, did sometimes a pretty good job. Uh, D. Ziggins, Steve, have you have you ever went to Crete? I, it, okay, I've been to Crete. if that's what you're asking. I've never seen a Minotaur because they're mythological, despite the ending of Anchorman 2. Sid says, I read a long piece of yours about Teddy Roosevelt for a book called Lion in the White House. It was extremely insightful. Oh, thank you. After reading a lot of Gore Vidal on TR, you gave a very different view. Yeah, I tend to give a different view from Gore Vidal, not just because uh, I don't think that history owes me any kind of explanations, but also because I, a lot more than he does, know what I'm talking about. Uh, D. Zig and Steve, do you like the Narnia movie trilogy? Not that much, no. Sid says, by the way, I finished United States, and surprisingly enough, the essays on politics were my favorite. Oh, really? Were they really? Oh, my. Did they send you, I don't know how young you are, did they send you scurrying to Wikipedia? Where should one go from here to read more of Vidal's nonfiction? Well, there are a lot of smaller collections of essays and periodical prose. A lot of those smaller collections have pieces that didn't make it into United States. And also, of course, there are later collections that you have to take with a grain of salt because he started to lose his mind, but he kept coming out with books. So you do those. Uh, Auntie Guy says, true to canine stereotype, my little dog always barks at the Amazon delivery guy. Frida loves delivery trucks, loves them. When they're parked, I'm on a main thoroughfare here, so they park up and down the street all day long, and she loves them. She knows there's somebody in there, so first of all, she knows she's guaranteed fussing. She wants fussing from everybody. She wants everybody to stop what they're doing and fuss over her. Bend down, fuss over her, coo over her, say she's the prettiest dog you've ever seen, all that sort of stuff. And then when she's had enough of that, you don't have to do that for about a minute. And then she'll had enough and she'll go on her way. She wants that from everybody, and she knows there's somebody in that truck who can't get out any other way but through the door. So that really appeals to her. And I think she also likes the fact that when she scurries up the stairs to the platform where the driver sits, she's in an enclosed space of metal. So when she lets out a yodel, it echoes and sounds really big. That's also why she loves the subway station, because it's a big open space, and when we walk in, she just lets rip because it's gonna sound so much bigger. uh, Cosmic Gaze 1994. Thoughts on these obscenely expensive multi-volume book sets that only very rich people could be able to afford to buy? Example, the complete works of Erasmus. Yeah, or any really good top-notch academic set, academic press set. Yeah, they're utterly ridiculous. You can't afford to buy them. Uh, and yet they're always great. That set by University of Toronto of the complete works of Erasmus is unbelievable. It's unbelievably good. And I have seen it. I have seen the whole of it on and off throughout the years at the Brattle Bookshop, but I wouldn't want them here anyway. They take up a whole bookcase for books that I would not consult all that often. Uh, DZGIN says, my favorite your favorite vampire representation in movies, excuse me, in movies and books. It's not a fair question. You're asking with the best of intentions, but it's not a fair question right now because I am currently caught on an infinite loop of a vampire movie. A vampire movie. I'm currently constantly watching Megalopolis and Nosferatu, the new production of Nosferatu, over and over and over and over again. And the fact that one of those is a vampire movie, I think maybe arguably you could say both of them are. But Nosferatu is a vampire movie, and it's temporarily removing my ability to even think about, much less judge, other vampire movies. So, I don't know if that's out yet. I don't know if that Nosferatu is out yet. Uh, uh, Colin says, Steve, what are some of your favorite movies? Well, a lot of them are predictably historical. Patton, Beckett, um, 12 Angry Men, True Grit, and Rooster Cogburn. 1776, the movie version, I think is excellent. Uh, but also Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and my all-time favorite movie, The Lion in Winter. Uh, the active mind is here. Steve, is that you in the thumbnail? The creatine and carnivore diet are really paying off. Yeah, I just took a quick selfie. I didn't feel like going online for a picture, so I just I whipped off my Gymshark T-shirt and just snapped a picture. I thought it was, I didn't know that it could be viewed as bragging, because this was leg day anyway. Manny, the key to liking history is mandatory Herodotus read along with Steve. Oh my, the Herodotus read along. Well, I'd have to find. Oh, I guess for a read along, I wouldn't have to find a common domain translation, would I? I could just use any translation if I'm not reading from it. If I'm not reading it out loud. Well, chalk it up to the new year. Kevin J.N. Steve, can you overwalk your dog? I notice they naturally seem to sleep a lot. How do you walk Frida? Is she the one who decides when? Okay, a lot of questions here. Really good ones, though. Frida decides when. Yeah. We have no time. We have no schedule. She decides when. She wants to go out. My answer is yes. Period. No matter what. No matter when. No matter why. She wants to go out. My answer is yes. Because it's the one freedom I deny her. I don't give her the freedom to come and go as she pleases. So if she wants to go out, my answer is yes. And so should yours be. And when we're on our walk, I was making this point about her new fabric harness. I was holding her up in the air by the harness to see how strong it was and whatnot. And then I realized, when's the last time there was tension on the leash when we walk? The leash just swings between us. She walks a foot in front of me, very busily bustling along, but no more than that, no less than that. She doesn't want to walk side by side with me, but she doesn't want to walk any further away. And she's constantly looking over her shoulder to give me a quick eye check. So I don't really need the harness to be all that strong. I'm sure it'll do fine the way it is. But she decides when, and she also decides where we go, usually. I mean, I always have an idea. Wouldn't it be fun to go, to this field or that park or whatever? But if she wants to go somewhere else, we do. She wants to go in a different direction, we do. And at least once a day, and again, this is something you should do too if you have a dog, at least once a day, she also decides how long. The best kind of a walk with a dog is where you stop whenever they have a will to stop, and you stop there as long as they want until they want to move on. No pulling at the leash. No, not even a suggestion of it. Just, you want to stop? We'll wait. We'll stop and smell this, examine this, all you want. At least once a day, I try to give her a walk like that, where I am not moving along. If I move along, she'll move along with me. So I at least once a day, usually it's 4 or 5 times a day, but at least once a day, I like to give her that kind of walk where there's no input from me at all. I'm just along for the ride. Uh, and as to the first question, can you overwalk a dog? Yes, you can. Once they start to get older, you're going to think that humans are virtually immortal compared to dogs. So you have barely changed at all in the times that you've had your dog, but they are getting older. And usually humans aren't aware enough of that soon enough. So then they are overwalking a dog who is never going to say no. If they're walking with the person who's their whole universe, they're never going to say no. But you should be aware of whether or not they're getting overtired. I'm thankfully a long way off from that. Frida is almost 8 years old and has not slowed down a single bit. So I don't have to worry about that yet. But I've had to do that many, many times where I've had whole groups of dogs that just, sooner or later, there comes a month, there comes a half a year, suddenly you're looking around and you're saying, you don't really want to go any further, do you? You will, and you won't signal it, but you don't want to. If you had your complete druthers, you wouldn't go any further. So you have to be aware of that. That is overwalking. Steve Ronstein says, what do dogs feel about the human breath? They're only analyzing its food content. That's all. Anti-Guy says, Rogan literally has fried his brain, which how much weed he smokes. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how much brain there was to begin with. He can't be really dumb to be such a wealthy person. But he couldn't do any of that around the sitting vice president. He couldn't do any of that around her. And I don't think he would be interested in that. I'd be amazed if she actually shows up on his show. I mean, the grounds are not safe for her, and they would have to be made safe. A lot of the people in his entourage are not safe around her. They wouldn't be allowed. They won't pass clearance. I'm not sure that he would pass clearance. No, it'd be great if she could do it. I'm sure she could handle herself, but I doubt it will happen. Sarah Bell says, hi, Steve, made it to Italy. Read Dante on the train journey here. Oh my. Colin says, getting into the season by finally reading Frankenstein. Okay, so no one's using nominatives anymore. We're just going straight to our verbs. Manny says, do you like the Narnia books then? I grew up with the Narnia movies, and I'm thinking of revisiting that world. I never really did like the Narnia books either. No, not really. Uh, Kevin Compton says Rohan's questions. How wow, how many push-ups can your Secret Service guys do? Rogan's questions must be what you mean. Uh, are there any on the carnivore diet? Can I interview them? Sid says, yes, I had 30 tabs open while going through United States. Oh, wait, your chat jumped. It was Sid. There we go. Half were Wikipedia tabs, half were tabs where I was checking what you had to say about the office he was praising. There's a lot of intersection. There's a lot of intersection there. And all of his political commentary, none of it is general, all of it is specific to the events of the time. So really, United States, at least for that part, should be annotated. And I wonder if we'll ever see an annotated United States. That'd be great. Colin says, are there any good Star Trek comic series? Not that I've ever seen, no. Anti-Guy says, writers of Rogan. As Aslan says, most researchers download academic books illegally. I don't doubt it. Academic journals, too. Oh, my God. Specialist journals? It's like $2,000 for one issue for 1 year. It's also prohibitively expensive. It's all based on institutions. Good luck being an independent scholar if your institution can't underwrite what you're doing. Comics Gaze says, speaking of Sam Adams, is the new Stacy Schiff biography of him worth reading? Yes, it is, very much so. Anti-Guy says, no, Steve's favorite movie is The Joker. Colin says, do you like the movie The Third Man? Not particularly, no, I don't dislike it. Hazy Hill says, if she chooses to do Joe's show, I wonder if she's flying into Austin Airport or if they fly her into another route for security reasons. Yeah, it's a nightmare to do. I mean, it's not as bad a nightmare as like Tim Pool, where a lot of stuff on that compound of his is just blatantly illegal. And not only passively illegal, it is actually meant to overthrow the government. So she's definitely not going to do something like that. But Rogan's not that much different. All these people, I mean, Rogan makes what? $2,750,000 a week. He is a nation unto himself. He's a nation unto himself. He lives in a bubble where he controls literally every breath of every person and every thought in every head, every routine. And people like that tend to think the laws are made for other people. So I wouldn't be. I'm sure he's not as bad as Tim Pool, but I wouldn't be surprised if wherever he is, whatever compound guests are flown into, is riddled with things that the vice president couldn't come anywhere near. DZJN says, so in your opinion, the new Nosferatu is very good? I hope so. We need more scary vampires. I honestly don't know if it's very good. I honestly don't know. I think I've watched it too many times to know. David Adams says Nosferatu is being released on Christmas Day in the UK and it looks wonderful. Oh, you looked up is there a trailer online or something like that? I don't think it will disappoint you, but I don't know that I'm willing to say that it's good. I don't know. I honestly don't. Hannah's Books is here. I'm in for Herodotus in the new year. Yes, a read along of Herodotus. The next one up is this. We're going to go back from Bring Up the Bodies to read Wolf Hall again. Deep in the Read says, speaking of Herodotus, I just read it for the first time. Incredible, but too much detail to absorb in one reading. I agree completely. Everyone in my reading group dropped it around book 3. Oh, well, you don't want to drop it. But every single passage, it's not every single chapter, every single passage of Herodotus is just teeming with stories, people, stories. And the first time through, it's almost impossible to keep it all. It is impossible to just keep it all in your head. It's just this wonder of Herodotus telling you wonderful stories, but you do need to keep reading it. Aslan says, do you have any advice for people who are afraid of dogs? Well, not specific to dogs. That, of course, is incomprehensible to me. But not specific to dogs. No, for me, my advice would be just in general for things you're afraid of that aren't trying to frighten you, which is to overcome it. Not meaning to sound blithe, but no matter what it is, you should overcome it. You should overcome that fear. The way to do it is always the same. Start small. Start with something that absolutely will not trigger that fear so that you can see it in isolation for the irrational reaction that it is. So find an incredibly friendly, big, floofy, fluffy, brainless dog, a dog that would not be a danger to you under any circumstances whatsoever. And therefore, rationally, beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is no cause for fear here. I'm sure there's a dog like that within half a mile of where you live right now. In a situation like that, whether it's that or whatever the fear is, you will know there is no cause for fear here. So if I'm afraid, I can isolate that. I now know the element of this that is irrational and what that irrational element feels like. And you can start to attack that yourself. Is that you shouldn't allow those to stand. Uh, oh no, Hamilton Thompson was next. Oh no, he wasn't. Anti-Guy says, since they are in negotiations, her and Rogan, what do you think of the terms that Rogan is laying out? Uh, Well, I don't know. It can't be subject matter. You don't do that to a vice president. So I'm assuming that it's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm assuming it's just what would fall under the general heading of physical plant. Uh, can we do you want to meet in a neutral territory? Do you which Rogan won't do because a neutral territory will show that he's 5 feet tall. Do you want to meet in a neutral territory? Do you want does everybody here have to pass a background test? Are people on watch lists? Are there unresolved felony issues, whatnot? All that sort of stuff. Unregistered weapons, the illegal weapons. I'm assuming. I'm sure. I don't think he's laying out terms. I think if they're in negotiations, that's what it is. Is there any way that we can make this super popular venue acceptable for a sitting vice president? Uh, Manny says, "What are your thoughts on the whole what is there a canon in Tolkien discussion that has been going on recently?" There hasn't been a discussion. One lunatic paid by by Amazon said there is no Tolkien canon and has been roundly mocked and criticized and condemned by literally everyone else who's not on the payroll of the show. It's a ridiculous thing to say. If his ridiculous argument, it isn't a discussion, it's just him making this because he was paid to say it. And if what he says is true, then there is no canon for anything. And that's ridiculous. If I were to ask him, is there a fixed family history of your own courtship of your wife, and he would say yes. And if I said no, there isn't, he'd be outraged. No, there is a canon. His idea was ridiculous. It's just a last ditch effort to defend the worst television show in the history of the industry. Uh, Sid says, I suspect there are a few good rants in you if you can be God on the subject of how Vidal portrayed JFK. You bet there are. I know basically nothing about him, and I would have taken his word if I hadn't known you. Well, now you know better. that you shouldn't take his word on anything, and Steve is always right. Uh, and Christopher Hitchens just lapped that up, just adopted it hook, line, and sinker. That simple jealousy, simple schoolyard jealousy. Cosmic Gaze, Steve, don't forget we live in a country where people can become millionaires by sitting on a chair playing video games all day. Yeah. Anti-Guy says, I thought the Mar-a-Lago scene in the Apprentice film was very good. Spoiler alert, he gives Roy Cohn silver cufflinks that he lies about and says they are diamond. What did you make of Sebastian Stan's performance? What did you make of the performance in the role? Deep in the Read says, don't worry, I'm pressuring my book club to finish Herodotus. The difficult middle section is worth it for the climactic stuff in books 7 and 8. Really great sense of drama at Thermopylae. I'm amazed you got your book club to even try it. Gandhi says, as a child, I was trapped in an elevator. Adults stated, quote, we are never going to get out of here. I'm sure it was a matter of moments, but it was very traumatic, initiated claustrophobia. Oh my. I keep remembering that article. There was an article in the New Yorker, probably 25 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that, 20 years ago. There was a long article in the New Yorker about a guy who was trapped in an elevator for a long time. It wasn't just a few minutes. He was trapped for a long time. And the article ends, of course, by saying that he never voluntarily got in an elevator again. But the description of what he went through and how one administrative thing after another was missed so that nobody even realized he was trapped in that elevator. It's not they were trying to get him out all that time. He went a huge amount of time without anyone knowing that he was trapped in an elevator. The article was fascinating for what it said about elevators and their safety and whatnot. But we do have to wrap this up, keep in mind. DZGIN says, do you like Penguin do I like Penguin on HBO? I think it's fantastic. I haven't watched it yet. I have a screener for a whole bunch of episodes. But I watch Megalopolis and Nosferatu instead. Anti-Guy says, Twitch streamers are a hilarious phenomenon to me. Hassan Piker is the most readily available example of what a jerk Twitch attracts. he's the most readily example, but he's not the worst, not by a long shot. Uh, a man, he says, I also saw the Nerd of the Rings, a huge Tolkien lore channel, did interviews with the ROP cast after previously, for some reason, defending the show. I wonder if he is also being paid. I think that anyone who is defending the show on the merits is being paid to do so. I'd be amazed if that weren't true. Brian Constantine says, I don't speak dog, but I have learned to recognize the bark that means I see you, but I'm on a leash or in a house and can't run out to you. Andy Guy says, I like Sebastian Stan a lot. I thought he did the right thing by making Trump look like a big buffoon without dispensing with showing what an absolute horror the man is. I was curious about that. I'm curious what I don't like the show. But I'm curious what people make of him. Is it like, for instance, would you call it a career making turn as an actor? Gandhi says, I have never forgiven that adult who have no thought to his words affecting a child, who gave no thought to his words affecting a child. It is a rather odd overreaction, although I'm not one to talk. I kind of avoid elevators. Sid says, do you watch the Netflix Daredevil show? I don't love the character, but that was surprisingly good. I did watch it, and it was surprisingly good, except for a rather predictable element. You can guess what it was. The predictable element was the ending, where Matt Murdock beats the crap out of Kingpin because he's morally righteous. That's not how beating the crap out of someone works. I know that you have to please the actor, and you have to please the writers and whatnot who don't know anything about the comic. But I don't know of a comic book fan that appreciated that. That shouldn't be possible, and it actually cheapens both Daredevil and Kingpin to make it that way. But the show, yeah, just in general, largely was very good. Cosmic Gaze, does your dog cry or whine during thunderstorms? No, Frida's not afraid of anything. Manny says, she looks to me. Her first thunderstorm, her first anything. She looks to me. If I'm not bothered, she's not bothered. Manny says, it surprised me because he has hundreds of videos on obscure Tolkien lore, and then suddenly he switched to, so yeah, it must be something fishy going on. And Gandhi says, just picked up Woodward's War. I am ambivalent as he waited to reveal the full extent of Trump's knowledge about COVID. Yeah, to his own profit. Well, I'm talking about the book at length on Monday on CPL Radio's Books of the Week. We have a massive doubleheader to start the show. We have on CPL Radio's Books of the Week. We have the A block is a piece of new fiction, and the B block is a piece of nonfiction, and then a piece of fiction. And the lineup on Monday is Bob Woodward's War and the new Sally Rooney. Quite the show. Andy Guy says it is a career-making turn, but I think his performance in the Tonya Harding movie was really what put him on the map. Oh, interesting. Brian Constantine says, I like the Netflix Jessica Jones series, at least the first season or two. The actress can do no wrong in my book. Manny says, what are your thoughts on the Gladiator movie? Do you mean the original? With Richard Harris? I really liked the original. Unless you mean the sequel. I don't know much about the sequel. But I'm at the end of the comments, and I need to be at the end of this Stevestream. It was always going to be short, unfortunately. I wish that weren't the case, because this is a blast. Anti-Guy says, my little dog is afraid of everything, but his previous owner abandoned him in the rain as a little boy. Oh, my. Oh. That's too bad. Afraid of everything is no way to live. Manny says, the 2000 version, of Gladiator. I largely liked it. Deep in the Read says, speaking of Trump, do you think it's worth reading any books on him now? I see so many new ones every time I go to a bookstore. I wonder if it's just empty trend hopping. It is just empty trend hopping. Echo Fall says, what are your thoughts on Sally Rooney? You'll find out. You'll find out. Gandhi says, Pacino's autobiography is getting good reviews. His interview with Conan was very good. I'll take your word for it. Haven't read it. Don't plan to read it. But anyway, I need to go. I need to go. Sorry about that. This has been a lot of fun. I'll make a bunch of videos tomorrow, and maybe we can do a Stevestream tomorrow. But I do have to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for being here. This was fun as always, just wonderful. But I've got to wrap it up because I've got. I mean, tomorrow's the end of the week, so I've got deadlines to meet. But I'll see you all soon on the videos. So bye bye, and I hope you're doing well.